I very much actually literally picture in my mind, I'm a mountain, and a mountain is able to sit strongly in his foundation. The storm can rage around him, but he's unmoved. And so for me, I want to be able to sit in that strength and be able to have equanimity throughout the ups and the downs.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unstoppable Woman podcast. I am super excited for our guest today. This is a colleague of mine, Chris Dufey, and he is an amazing man, no longer business owner. He just sold his business. We're going to get into the details of that. A podcaster in his own right. And you may be wondering, why a man on the podcast? And it's not like we don't have men on the podcast ever, but there's always an angle or a reason that I like to bring. And Chris has been busy. He has four daughters. And we thought it would be a super interesting perspective to bring to the podcast to have a man who's running a business or has recently been running a multi-million-dollar business, talk about what it's like to run a business, raise four girls, and raise them to be strong, unstoppable women in this world and what that takes. So welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Amira, thank you so much for having me. I am super excited and looking forward to this conversation. There's so much that I want to be able to share. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yes. And you might all notice that Chris has that sexy Australian accent. So tell everyone where you're from, what your business was, give them a little bit of a context of your journey and
Okay. In a nutshell, I'm obviously, as you can tell through my Australian accent, which hopefully you can actually understand me, from Sydney, Australia. At the age of 18, I became a personal trainer because I was actually really overweight as a child. It really held me back. It really caused a lot of unhappiness within myself, being overweight. And I learned to lose the weight. I became a personal trainer at 18 because I wanted to help others be able to start going through that transformation. I ran a great personal trainer. Well, it wasn't a great, but it was an okay personal training business in Sydney, and it grew to be an agency. I had trainers working for me. Everything was going great. I married the woman of my dreams when I was 25. And then I found Lauren, my wife, and we found out that she was pregnant when we were 26. And she was actually told as a teenager that it was likely that she would never be able to bear children. And it was an amazing piece of news. 3 days later, I actually got the opportunity to move to Dubai to start a fitness business there, which was brilliant timing because, to be honest, I was in a place where I was really unhappy with my work. I was in a position where I could not see myself ever getting out of, where I was like, what am I doing? I'm running this business. I'm earning okay money. I just bought my second property in Sydney, and I was ticking the boxes of success, like what people have told us to do so that we can be successful and happy. And then after just finding out my wife was pregnant, I was I just saw this white picket, plain vanilla life unfolding in front of me. And I was I didn't sign up for this. I didn't consciously choose any of these things, and it was freaking me out. And then this opportunity came up to start this business in Dubai. I took it and I sold my car. I sold my house. I sold my clients. I gave everything away. My wife was 6 months pregnant and I flew to Dubai. I knew one person on the other side. I slept on a couch for 3 months so I could get that business up and running. Flew back to Sydney. My wife gave birth to our fabulous eldest daughter, Arlo. We all moved to Dubai together. And it was not sunshines and rainbows because I burnt out again running the business in Dubai. And then that's when I started to dabble with the online business stuff.
So let's pause there. Let's pause there 1 second. You said that's where I burnt out again. Okay. So there was burnout. The story I heard was it was just not the vision. It was too much white picket fences and not enough, adventure. But there was burnout there. And this is a big thing for our audience is they're driven, they go hard, they have a lot of initiative and they have big dreams and goals and they're not afraid of that hard work, that the effort that's required to build a business. And there's this pushback because they don't want the burnout. So now you've had 2 experiences of this. Tell me a little bit about that, because that seems that now that's a pattern, correct?
Yes,
would you say?
Is. And it very much is. And it's very astute of you, Amira, to pick up on that, because for me, with my experiences of it, and I think there's different spectrums, but I think typically when we say burnout, I think the root of it is doing something that doesn't actually serve you at the purpose that you need to be doing. It is a lack of energy. It is entropy. It is doing the things that you are not completely lit up and aligned with. And that's the difference, because, for example, today, right now, I've actually got 8 pieces of content that I need to shoot. So there's actually 6 interviews that I'm doing today. And then I've got a couple of other videos to shoot with this videographer that will come. I'm lit up about this. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
I've just sold my company less than a week ago. I'm doing more work now than I've been doing in the previous months, which is fantastic.
But it's work that you love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's work that you love. It's like what you're creating, the creation side. So did you get sucked in? Cause I think what happens, tell me if you agree, is I think what happens is you have this idea. I'm going to move to Dubai. I'm going to start this business. You're all in. You're in the same place that you're in right now. You're excited about it. You're engaged. It's a new adventure. And then the adventure becomes less new. And maybe there's some commonality here with relationships, right? Like there's the honeymoon stage, and then it becomes less honeymoon and more normalized. And how do you keep it exciting, engaging, aligned, or do you not? Does it just get? I mean, did you sell your business because at some point it got to the place of? I'm skipping ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
No,
did it get to the place where I'm like, I'm no longer in creation mode and I no longer know how to add life to it in these other ways. So it just has to shift.
The pattern that I've continued to see within myself and the experience, I think more points to its evolution as a person. So, for example, like when I first went to Dubai, I literally worked around the clock. Like I would wake up at 4 a.m. so that I could see like a 6 a.m. client. I would see clients all throughout the day. I'd get a training session in for myself. I'd come home at night, cook dinner, like go to bed, start again. And the thing was, I was just in like machine warrior operating mode going through it. And I could align with that. So there's a couple of different parts to this, which I feel like is number one, if you're feeling burnt out, struggling, you're not having that motivation and inspiration to do what it is that you need to do, questioning oneself and saying, am I aligned with what I'm doing right now? Because for me, there's many, many, many evolutions that I've gone through, and it's accepting that fact as well. Also accepting that there is pain along the way. So using the pain teacher to be able to highlight that awareness of what's going on with it. And for me, that's helped. And then to skip across to the other part of your question as well, Amira, which is like, why did I sell? To be perfectly honest, it really came down to this one like phrase that encapsulated it for me as I was really thinking this through. And it was, I want to be more. I don't want to have more. And again, it was an evolution. I just evolved past this business. Like I was like, I don't want to talk about and do that stuff. I want to talk about and do this other stuff. And like selling a coaching business is really rare. And one of the biggest problems I had was I didn't have a lot of like models or people to kind of be like, that's how they did it. So I very much went through this process, making it up as I went through. And brilliantly, it was a fantastic, fantastic exit. And I can happily talk about so much of that as well. But the reason why I sold was because I knew that I had grown past what this business was serving and how it was doing it. And I wanted to become more, and I wanted to test myself, and I wanted to go onto other avenues. So I had to let that go.
Yeah, you are totally speaking my language and the language of this podcast. I talk about all the time our more life directive. Like we're as humans, if we're tapped into this, we know it, we feel it. It's our directive to follow our growth path. And if we get tapped, if we hit that limit, it feels horrible and we don't know what's stopping us, and we have to break through and we have to, become more to grow into our full potential. And of course, that full potential keeps growing. So, okay, I have more questions for you. Can I shift into this? You said something about pain, and I just want to go back to that because I think there's the perspective that I think I can slip into, that I hear other entrepreneurs slip into, other people who have built, multiple $1 million businesses. They have some uber level of success, and they can say, I want a different kind of life. I don't want to work like that. I'm not going to grind it out in the same way. It doesn't have to be a struggle. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be painful. And I totally get that. It's a value stance that I have. It's like, change your perspective so that you're all in on what you're doing, or change what you're doing so that you're all in on what you're doing. That said, I personally believe, I'm interested in your take on this, I personally believe that there's effort that you have to put in, and that in the beginning, when you grow a business, you don't know how much effort that is, and you have to become someone who understands that level of effort and that kind of capacity. And when I heard you say, like, I was up at 4 and I was doing this all day and I was doing it day over day over day, it's like, in the beginning, I had to put that level of intensity in. And there are times still in my business where I'm like, okay, this is go time. We need to put this level of intensity in. And I've learned to grow my capacity and not be afraid of that, and to trust myself and understand my limits and all of those things. But I find it often disingenuous where people say, if I could tell my earlier self one thing, it would be, take it easy. Don't stress out so much. Don't go so hard. And I'm like, you would never get where you're at if you didn't have that level of pressure to some degree. Okay. You got the mic now. Do you agree or disagree?
I love this. And so, okay. Oh, this is good. So when people say, oh, I wish I did take it more easier, 20-year-old Chris, or whatever, 25, or I'm 35 now, like whatever. And like previous Chris, no, I would have said to him, bleed more, dude, go harder. Do you know what I mean? Like okay, look, on one side, I have suffered from depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation. That has happened at many points during my life as well. They are dark times. I'm thankful for those dark times as well, because they've forged the man that I am today. And so I think with so many great questions, the answer is best held by having the strength to hold the tension between the paradox. And so if we look at this, I look at this in, let's look at 2 different archetypes. Okay. So for me, there's the warrior Chris, which was, I would literally say, like we have a mutual mentor, and I've said to him many times, dude, just point me in the direction. I will run through walls to make this happen. I will bleed through my forehead. I will outwork absolutely everyone. I was just talking with him yesterday, and he goes, dude, you're the most disciplined person that I know. And I go, I know I am, because I have literally consciously created who I am today to the best of my ability. On the other side, so we have warrior on one hand. On the other side of the spectrum, I see a wizard. Okay.
I love it.
We have the person that is in the warrior that is just doing and grinding and just working his absolute backside off. And that has to happen at times. On the other side, there's the wizard, which he has the ability to sit back and strike his staff at the exact right time with minimal effort, yet the entire world changes. And so for me, I've got a friend, and he actually says, like, there's levels to like entrepreneurship, and it's you're an employee, then you're a manager, then you're a business owner, then you're an entrepreneur, then you're an investor, and then you're a wizard. And he goes, if you find yourself working too hard, you're a shit wizard. And I was like, there's some real truth to that, because we have to understand that there's ebbs and flows. There's chapters to life. There's going to be times that are very hard. There are going to be times where things are much easier. And for me, I very much actually literally picture in my mind, I'm a mountain. And a mountain is able to sit strongly in his foundation. The storm can rage around him, but he's unmoved. And so for me, I want to be able to sit in that strength and be able to have equanimity throughout the ups and the downs. Like, Amira, last Thursday was the closing date of the business. So I literally jump on a meeting, a Zoom call with Jameen, the head of the team. We had to do a bunch of stuff. So they were kicking me out of platforms like Slack and Asana, and like security passwords changing and all of that stuff, right? Didn't take that long. Then we said our thanks and everything like that. I was like, peace out, close the Zoom call, done. 100% exited from the business. Absolutely, like, that's it for me. I went down to a beach bar down with my wife. I met her down there. I had a soda water. We sat there for about 30 minutes and I was like, I'm bored. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to train and like get on with my day. Then I had to pick my girls up from school. Like, life goes on. And so for me, it was just being able to have more of a steady stream of balance, of equanimity, of strength, of presence, and then being able to understand as well. And I think that comes, for me, my belief right now is I think that truly comes when you're able to take the highs and the lows and you're able to like mix it into a sense of peace for me. So for me, I'm wanting to optimize life for peace. And so when it comes to the pain, it's accepting the pain and it's looking into it. It's going into it. It's asking it, why is this actually coming up? And then being able to have the level of awareness to make the right decisions moving forward. Because I was in deep pain before selling the business, and very thankfully I'd done the right things to get to the point to be able to then actually sell it so quickly and so easily. And like, it was a dream come true sale. So for me, it was very much a case of being able to understand or accept. I think accept. I think there's two words that come to me. Acceptance of what is, because that's reality. And I think stress only really comes when you're not accepting what reality is. Two, I think there comes a level of grace when you're able to lean back and let go of the stories that you're trying to tell yourself, because that non-attachment, that dropping of the story is the basis of the problems that we're going to have.
Totally. Chris, so juicy. Oh my God. Freaking love this. So there's so many things I want to circle back to, but first I just have to say, don't be a shit wizard. That I'm making a meme in my life. Okay. Don't be a shit wizard. Okay.
Do that on my forehead.
Totally. Because we are wizards. We can make this so much easier. We can tap in. We can dial it in. You started off this conversation by talking about alignment, and there is such power. And I think people get confused here because they're told to let the universe, align with the universe, let things work. And then here we are. And I know I freaked everyone out by saying you have to be disciplined, work your tail off, make it happen, right? There's a lot of people that are like going screaming from the room here, but a lot of other people will be grateful for that message and understand that, like, the duality doesn't have to be separate. The duality can be, you can hold both. Okay. You can hold both. So I freaking love that. I want to circle back to a couple other things you said. You talked about consciously creating your life. And you also talked about being 18 and being overweight and changing that completely. Very few people have mastery over those things, have the ability to consciously create what they want. They say, I don't want this. This is painful. This is uncomfortable. I don't like this. I'm going to do this instead and consciously create it. And it's a big part of what I teach and talk about on the podcast. Can you share a bit about your process for consciously creating your life?
Love this question. And I think you said one of the key words for me when it comes to this, and that's mastery. I want to be able to be a master in the things they absolutely love. And I think that only truly comes when we have a deep knowledge of what our values are. And so for me, I know what my values are. Like there are 4 key values in literally everything in my life. If you looked at my calendar, that will reflect my values. If you look at my bank statement, that will reflect my values. Like if you look at the words that I speak, that will reflect my values. And so I think the beginning of this is understanding what are my values and what is most important to me. And then it's being able to get rid of everything else and being able to just focus on what it is that you really want to be able to do. And I think that comes by accepting the chapter of life that you are in right now. So
give us an example here. Like, tell us what your values are, okay? And how that
quite literally
played
right
out.
Now. So my values, my 4 values is wisdom. I want to be able to have a deep understanding and knowledge of practical philosophy to how to live a well-lived life. 2 is health. I want to be able to look, feel, and perform at an exceptional world-class level every single day. 3 is wealth. I want to be able to have the wealth for me that provides the life for myself and my family and my community. And 4 is going to be love. I want to be in loving relationships with my family and my friends. That's it. Like that's all 4 of it. And so for me, it's interesting because I can design my life around that really easily. I can have the practices, I can have the routines, the rituals, all of that stuff of what I do because it goes around these 4 values very simply. So therefore I don't feel like there's huge distraction because I can palm off the other things because I know immediately, well, that's just not what I'm truly interested in because I want mastering these 4 things. That's it. Mastering these 4 things that I keep going through. How that looks today.
So let me just interrupt there because I think this is very poignant. So oftentimes my clientele, listeners of the podcast, they're women who are running businesses. They have kids, they have partnerships, they have husbands, wives, all the things. And they want to have great health. They want to have great practical wisdom. They want to have great wealth and they want to have great relationships. And yet the way you speak about that makes it sound super easy. Like if I just acknowledge my values, it will be easy. And that is not, those are not the conversations I have. The conversations I have are, I'm torn between being there for my kids and like my health and getting a good workout in and my business. And I can't do anything well. It's not mastery. It feels like juggling balls and you're dropping them all the time. And 2 questions here. Do you think this is a male female thing? Just how women approach responsibility and boundaries of time and commitment? Or do you think that this is how you have approached? And then if it's how you have approached, then please share, because that would be a huge value to our listeners. That how have you shown up as a father and a husband and run a multi-million-dollar business and been in peak, performance, all of that?
Yeah, like I get this a lot. And the beginning of this, the foundation that I wanted to live my life with less compromises. So for me, it was very much the case of, like, we all see the stories of someone, makes heaps of money, but then their relationships are terrible, or they climb the ladder of success, but then they look crap, they feel crap, they die early, like all of these things. I was just like, no, I'm not subscribing to that belief. I'm not subscribing to that belief at all. I want less compromises. And so for me, I want to be in fantastic physical shape. I want to be able to be acutely, with my mental faculty, dialed in. I want to be able to rock up as a father to my 4 daughters and be the best possible dad that I can be for them. I want to be loving. I want to be compassionate. I want to be joyful. For my wife, we've nearly been married for 11 years now. Do you know what I mean? I want to be the best possible man that is able to be the king for her, that best is able to serve her on a day-to-day level. So for me, it comes to accepting where the chapter is. And I think where you said, like, is it a man thing? Is it a woman thing? Like, how does this look? So our youngest daughter, Noah, she's 8 months old. And I could see, and so with Lauren and I in the conversations that we have, like I could see my wife, Lauren, go through the process now because we've done it 4 times. I've been able to see the process. She also had a miscarriage in the middle there as well. She's had 5 pregnancies. And so there was a acceptance from her level of, okay, I now have a newborn, and we have 3 other children. So when Noah was born, I then was like, hey, I'm going to take care of the eldest 3. I was like, I've got the big 3. You've got the little one. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just be in your bubble. You go through this process, and it's understanding like what happened. So for her, like business stuff really went to the wayside. Is she going to the gym and all that stuff as often as she was like before? No, but it was like it's changing of it. So it's accepting what can I actually be doing, and then understanding how are you showing up. So for a very practical like way in which I do this myself, I literally rank myself and set an intention every single day. So I journal in the morning, and through the 6 areas of my life, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as an entrepreneur, as my happiness, and as my health. These 6 areas, I will literally set an intention at the start of the day for how I want to show up. And my question for it is, today will be a win when ... And then I answer.
That's so good.
Yeah. So it's like for the 6 sections. At the end of the day, I look at it and I go, did I show up? And did I do what I intended to do for the day? And then I'll actually rank myself like 1 out of 10. Can't use a 7 because a 7 is a cop-out number. But 1 out of 10, I'll rank myself for the actual day. And my intention is I want 9s and 10s. I want on a day-to-day level to be 9s and 10s. And if I see an 8, I'm like, oh, damn.
How do you rank yourself? So yeah, no, this is super awesome. But we have to have a level of honesty and transparency with ourselves. How do you self-define what a 9 or 10 is versus an 8? What's the differentiating factor there?
So this is a great question, because this goes to what I call self-parenting, and which I feel like a lot of people are not able to do very well, because this comes from like really having true awareness and honesty with oneself. And it's a gut feeling at the end of the day. Like, I don't think someone can very much say, oh, like this is the clear definition of it. And again, I will ask my wife as well. I was like, how do you think I've been showing up? What would you rank me? Do you know what I mean? And I'll ask those questions from time to time to kind of get a bit of a reality check as well. But for me, it's literally looking from an output scenario. So it's not a result, right? So this is the difference, because what happens in the world and in our life, that is outside of my control. What is in my control are my thought and my actions. That's all I can control. So that's all I'm wanting to rank myself on. So if I can say my intention for my thoughts and actions today are this, then I know at the end of the day, well, did I do that or not? And then I can give myself a number.
Now let's talk about this process. So how long have you been doing this process? How many years?
This ranking, probably about 18 months.
18 months. Okay. So when you started this, I would imagine you were pretty, were you getting some good 9s and 10s already when you were starting this, or was there
it was like up and down.
Okay. So tell us about that process. So when you were starting, some days were 5, some days were 9, some days were lower, higher, all over the place. How did you course correct? Was it just an awareness practice? So at the end of the day, actually today was a 3. I sucked on this part of my life, and I have to own it. And just that level of awareness was enough, or did you take an extra step? Like, one of the things that I do at the end of the day is what would I have done differently? What would I actually, I say it differently. I say, what would I do differently? Because there are things that went well and things that didn't go well. When it didn't go well, what would I do differently? That's an internal thought. That is an action thought. And when I do that, I up level, because I'm priming myself. I'm setting my intention for, if I experience this again, which tomorrow's can be Groundhog Day if we let it be. I'm going to do this.
It most likely will.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your process on that? What do you do?
Okay. So I'll send you the links if you want. You can put in the show notes. I've got actual videos going through my morning and my evening rituals, which go actually like literally question by question how I word it and stuff like that. So I'll give you those links to be able to put in. But I think what's more important and to take away from here is two things, which is one, it's acceptance. And I'll come back to that chapter theme. So for example, if I fly to the US and I'm shooting interviews and I'm going into masterminds and all this kind of stuff, as an entrepreneur, I'm going to be ranking myself very highly. As a father, I'm ranking myself really lowly, but it's understanding that that's a part of the ebbs and the flows. So the idea is not hitting 10 out of 10 on absolutely everything every single day. It's understanding that some things will get a higher priority. Well, the true definition of priority is like one thing that's most important. So one thing is going to be most important, and understanding that the other things may not be super high. And that's okay, because then again, it comes back to what's my output? What are my thoughts and my actions for that specific thing?
Have you ever asked yourself, how do I grow my business without simply working harder? After all, there's only so many hours in the day. Being a smart, driven female entrepreneur doesn't always give us the results we desire. That's why I'm hosting a 3-day virtual event to walk you through exactly how to achieve your goals faster than you ever thought possible. The Unstoppable Woman Summit is designed to help you break through the invisible barriers of success and scale. This November, in just 3 days, I'm going to be giving you the exact roadmap that you need to dramatically increase your income without the burnout. Podcast listeners can save big by visiting theunstoppablewoman.com/breakthrough. This saves you $500 during our early bird pricing. You better hurry while the offer is still available. Bye for now, and see you at the summit. So you're traveling, you're not present with your family, you're doing your entrepreneurial thing. Mm-hmm. I would make an argument, and I'm curious about what you have to say, that you're setting an example of going after your dreams, of being of service, doing your work in this world, being generous. Your role modeling gives you points. Like why is that not a 9 or a 10, even if you're not in the same room with your girls?
It's a fantastic argument that most definitely can be made. And I'm probably a lot harder on myself than I should be. So that's why I would probably say to myself, like, as in, I'll rank myself. Let's say I'm in the States shooting interviews, and in the day I rank myself. I'm like, as a father, do you mean low? Maybe I had a Zoom call with the girls, or I send some loving voice notes to them, like saying good night, or having a voice note for when they wake up. Do you mean they can hear me giving them a message or something along those lines? Like every night, like I do like a guided meditation for my girls to go to sleep. So I might record something like that and send to them. But I know that it's a part of the ebbs and the flows, so I don't feel down about it. And I think that's probably the most important thing, because it's like understanding where we're at, but then it's also doing, how does it make me feel? And then how does that change where I'm operating from, my state, or from how I'm operating moving forward? And it does come through. And I don't think I've actually ever publicly talked about this, but the practice that was most definitive in doing this is multiple times throughout the day, I will ask myself, what is my intention? And it's having that pause to go, what is my intention? And being able to do that 3, 4, 5 plus times a day. So for example, I was on the bike riding here to my office, and I was like, what is my intention? I go, my intention is to best show up for these interviews. And then I will after this, I'll go for a walk on the beach, and then I'll set my intention, blah, blah, blah. I'll do that multiple times a day. Now that it's taken me, like I meditate twice a day, and I've done this for like quite some time. I've gone deep into meditation practices, different practices, and it took me a really long time to get to the point of doing that. And so like one part of it is like in my journaling in the morning, I'll say like, what is my intention for the day? And that starts me off. And there's been more days that I could poke a stick at Amira when I come back and look at my journal, I go, crap, I didn't set my intention more than once in the day. Like I did it at the start of the day and then that was it. And I was like, oh, bugger. Like, so it took me time and repetition and learning and a sense of slowing down and like calming myself, taking a conscious breath and being like, what's my intention now? And then being able to do that and move forward, because that practice alone profoundly has changed how I show up, because I'm more conscious and aware during the day.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have a lot of self-awareness. At the end of the day, you're honest with yourself. And instead of beating yourself up, you're doing something that other people don't do. And I just want to underscore this. You're reflecting on it, but not letting it take you down and back to your set point. You're like, it's a calling forward as opposed to I think a lot of people, I know I've experienced this, where I see myself. I'm like, oh, look, I just did that thing again. I just lost sight. I just went unconscious. And you can go into 1,000 lashes, or you can go into, okay, well, let's better our best. Let's keep going. And I think that how much has your experience in working out, and then I want to circle back to raising girls. Okay. One of the things that I have picked up on by listening to people who have built a disciplined workout routine is that they've learned discipline through being someone who works out. Were you always disciplined? You said you were overweight as a kid, so you had to learn discipline. Is that correct?
Yes. Something comes up for me that's, I don't know if it's learning discipline. I think it's building the skill of discipline, but underneath that, there is your identity. And I think it's more important to look at what's the identity in which I'm actually showing up from each day.
Huge.
And how do I actually change that? Because the fruit of my identity will then naturally come into what my actions, routines, behaviors, character traits,
100%.
skills, these be.
But 100%. Did you know that at 18, or is that the wise Chris?
No, I did not know that at 18.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, I did not know that early. I learned that in my 40s. Okay. I learned that identity drives decision. Like that is like huge. And I was just actually pulling together my notes for, we have a summit coming up in November. And I was pulling together my notes over the weekend. I was sitting outside on the patio with my iPad and like looking over what I wanted to teach and pulling it all together. I freaking love it. It's like one of my happy places. And I was like, working on how I was going to, like, new perspectives always drop in on this stuff. I was like, identity drives decision. And that's one of the things that I'm going to hit home with at the summit, and then decisions drive actions, right? Our choices drive our actions, and our actions drive our results. I mean, there's a lot of different flows that you can take with the like thoughts, feelings, actions, all of that. Yeah. But like identity drives decision, and decision drives your actions, and actions will create results, and they're either positive results or negative results, but it's part of that flow there. Anyways, I think this is hugely important. So you had to become someone who was disciplined, but at 18, you also had to learn discipline. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg kind of thing. You had to learn discipline to become someone who could own the discipline as an identity.
Yes,
am I right about that?
It's practicing and skill, and it's obviously it's great with hindsight, looking back and connecting the dots. But it's very much to like the original questions, like the correlation between fitness and business, for example, huge. Like, and it's very much the case of like you got to put the reps in. And the whole idea of putting the reps in, and it's not dirty reps either. It's good quality repetitions, good quality actions, like actually being able to, like in a fitness standpoint, it's literally teaching the body the movement pattern of how the body best moves, and then being able to then ingrain that movement pattern so that you can continually do it, and it becomes a kind of like unconscious skill that you can continually do. And so that's very much the case with entrepreneurship, because you will be consciously unaware that you're not good at something that you need to be able to do. For example, sales calls. Let's use sales calls for an example, right? So when someone's starting out, having to jump on calls and they're hopefully trying to sell their product or service or whatever, they're typically going to have some script that they've got in front of them, and it comes off really robotic, and it just doesn't, it's fumbly, and there's a lot of friction involved, and it's not great. Great. That's what we want. And again, when I've taught sales, do you know what I mean? It's typically like, you know what? Get 30 sales calls under your belt before you start asking any questions, because I just want you to start putting some reps in. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're going to learn more through the doing rather than constantly trying to like go read books or listen to podcasts or something like that. Just go have sales conversations, for example. So it's putting those repetitions in. And then I believe that translates a lot to all of these other skills and then character traits that we need to be able to build upon ourselves as well. And then obviously, do you mean that starts to actually change the identity? But for me, I don't know a quick way to change identity. Like, Jesus, I think if I did, do you know what I mean? Like, I'd be off a yacht in Sardinia, do you know what I mean, right now? Like, it'd be amazing. But it comes down to like understanding that it's slow. And again, there's like that understanding of what reality is. And like, when you start to change things, you know what, this is going to be a process. And for me, this one concept has changed a lot in my life. Change the time horizon in which you are trying to think that you're going to like have or achieve or do things. So rather than thinking, oh, great, you know what, in 90 days, I'm going to be ripped. Okay, no, that's not the case whatsoever. How do you want to be looking, feeling, performing in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the track?
Yeah. And
let's start to make that happen with the business. I want to be able to have, do you know what I mean, a $10 million a year business. Okay, great. Can you do that in 10 years? What about 25 years? And it's like, as soon as we start to extend that time horizon, I immediately feel stress just like drops immediately. And it's like, oh, there's not this time pressure that we're having to put on things, because that, I think, brings about the need and necessity to enjoy the process, or to just be a part of the process each day, which is, for example, how you get in shape. You do your workouts, you eat the way you need to do, you sleep, you have all of your stuff, and you just have to do it every single day. And then
just the reps.
Business, and I think it's the same with everything else.
Yeah. So I think there's two really interesting things here. Well, so many interesting things, not just two, but the patience and the action bit is so important. And it's confusing for people because they hear do the reps. That's the action. Like we've been talking about, like making sure you put the reps in, not the dirty reps, but the good reps in. That's action. And sometimes when people hear patience and time horizon, they translate that to, I don't have to put the reps in today. And that's just not true. It's you have to put the reps in today, and you have to give yourself a time horizon that's spacious. Now, if you put the reps in and you do the right things, you can actually shorten the time frame with which you achieve your goals. And what's interesting is it starts to happen faster than you ever thought possible, but not because of struggle or stress or anything. It's just, I'm going to do this. I want to also go back to identity. So I think of changing identity, and this is, again, how I teach it, is you have to get clear about who you want to be, and you have to figure out what actions someone who is that would take. And then you have to do two things. You have to go do those actions, even when it feels scary or not right or not who you are, before you feel ready. And constant space repetition for telling yourself who you are, repeating again and again who you are, not taking your eye off the ball on that. And if you do that, both the inner game piece of speaking to your subconscious and your identity, and the outer game piece of taking action, which reinforces the new identity to the subconscious, because you've done the thing and you haven't died. If you do reps on that, you change your identity and you become someone who's working at a much higher level. Now, what happens for most people is it feels really uncomfortable to take that action, so they don't take it. Unlike you, I came from a family of people who got kudos. Well, maybe just like you. I don't know what your upbringing was, so I take that back. I came from a family who didn't take bike rides on Saturday, but argued about what they read in the New York Times. That was my upbringing. Okay. And so I did not have any role model for working out. And the difference is I, in my 40s, finished a marathon. I walked a marathon, and it changed my identity of who I was in the world because I'd never done that before. Now, here's the sucky part about it, Chris, full transparency, is that after I finished that, I didn't set a new goal, a lifestyle goal, a 5-year, 10-year, next level goal. And I didn't have anything that I was working towards. And I stopped running. And I went back to running every once in a while. I'm back in the phase of getting back into it, and it feels good. But that's been a real wake-up call. I thought that identity had shifted, but I didn't keep the discipline up. I didn't keep the who I was being up. So I'm right back at it. Yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations and kudos. I think that's great. So for me, my parents had me when they were 17. They were both 17. My parents were when I came into this world, and coming from a family where I was like, we didn't have much money, and doing, I look back now and I love that they weren't able to give me any of that stuff, because it created this person with this drive that I now have come very much to peace with. And I think that was a great thing. And again, I'm making up a story about that to make myself feel good as well, because I've like done the work and like gone through those forgiveness exercises and all that, done the psychedelics, like, I've done that. So again, it's just a story. Like, is there a meaning to life? No, I don't think there is. Like, we make a meaning. We're meaning-making machines at the end of the day. And so I think when it comes down to like you walked a marathon, kudos, that's amazing, but then you didn't set the next thing. And then most likely you fell out of the habits. I think of two things, which is one being, some people jump up and down and say, like, how long does it take to form a habit? I think the technical answer is forever, because if you break the habit, then you broke the habit and it's not there anymore. Like, you just have to do it every single day. And then secondly, it actually comes down to the epiphany that I had after selling the company, which was now being in a place of financial freedom. I don't have to work for money to sustain the lifestyle that I want to have for the rest of my life. I came to this realization that we earn money so that we can work. The idea is to do more work. It's not to get out of work. People found out I sold the company. They're like, oh my God, what are you going to do now? I already knew what I wanted to do. So I was in that very fortunate fact that I kind of like went through that dark night of the soul before I actually like was in the actual position, because I was like literally next day, like straight into it. And I knew what I was doing. But it was understanding that we're put on this earth to work, to give, ultimately it's to give. And I want to be able to operate from the standpoint now where I'm like, wow, I'm in such a grateful position that I can give as much as I possibly can. So I feel very invigorated about learning and mastering the things that I want to, so that immediately turns into me being able to give as much as possible, and then thinking of it as a flywheel effect, because me giving, I want to be able to learn more so that I can give more, so I can learn more, so I can give more. And like, for me, it's this cycle that I want to continually perpetuate that becomes really easy to be able to actually have doing on a day-to-day level. So I think that's where it comes down to like understanding again, and it could come to the point, like for me, I went through this process, Amira, where I was questioning everything in my life. I came upon, I had a great male model. He gave me a recommendation for a book. It was Alison A. Armstrong's work, and it was called The Keys to the Kingdom. And then it got me into this other book that was actually called Death of a Hero, Birth of a Soul, which is fantastic for me. And especially as a man, this is specifically for men, and it just resonated with where I was going through life. And I was going through what Alison calls the tunnel, which is going from prince to king. And so for me, going into this king phase of my life, I had to go through this tunnel. And a part of that was like the killing off of this hero, this ego, so that I can actually become someone completely different on the other end. And I really started to feel that. But I questioned everything. I questioned, do I want to be married with Lauren? Do I want to be the type of father that I am? Where do I want to live? What's the work that I want to do? There was one day I stood in the gym for like 3 minutes. I literally stood there for like 3 minutes. I go, do I even want to do this anymore? Like, I've been doing this ritually for years now. Like, do I just want to be a fat dude? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just like a slob. And I questioned everything from a place of like consciously choosing what I want to do and where I want to be and who I want to be. And that's a painful process, and it's an arduous process, and it's an energetic tolling process as well. But I think it's very important to do as well.
I love it. Yeah. I'm gonna take that in. I'm gonna play with that and question everything. That is something that I'm gonna integrate for sure. Okay, so let's shift the conversation, Chris, because I want to wrap up, and I want to get to how to raise girls. Like, what's your philosophy on that? What is your it could be parenting, but specifically you're raising girls, and you've done a lot of deep thinking. You're a very conscious human. You're being very intentional about how you're being a father. How do you look at raising girls in this day and age? What are you concerned about? What are you paying attention to?
My current answer to that question is I want to be the man that they will marry. And now, whether it's not the man, because they could marry a woman and that's fantastic. But it's, do I act from the place, from a day-to-day level, the who I am, the essence of who I am and how I show up day to day? I want to be that person that they're going to spend their life with, because that's the strength, the commitment, the values that person is being able to be. So I want to be the best person I can be for them. So let
me repeat this back to you so that I understand. So I want to be the person that they will marry, and you want that because then you're instilling in your girls that, because I'm reading between the lines here. You tell me if I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
That Chris Dufey has a huge, high fucking standard. Okay. Like, your standard of what it takes to be a good human in this world, a good father, a good partner is pretty darn high. So if you show up at that level and they see that as your as their role model, then that's what they're going to be looking for in their lives. And then if they end up they will end up matching with that as adults when they're ready to be in partnership and in marriage. And that will be a hugely positive thing, because the people that we connect with, particularly our primary love partners, are so impactful to our health, well-being.
There's two parts to it, which is yes to the partner, but I don't think that's the most important part of it. There's one key thing I've learned from being a father so far, and that is they don't learn from what you say, they learn from what you do. I just want to operate from, that's kind of like level 1 foundation, kind of like operating system belief. And so the way that I show up is to be the person that I want, the kind of from them to be able to have the essence for themselves. And so for me, like you said, like, I have awareness. I look at my daughters, they are incredible with their self-awareness. Like, they'll be able to say, oh, I've got big feelings. Can I have a hug? Or I've got big feelings. I'm feeling this. I need to do this now. I just need to go have some time. I need to just like, and I'm like, oh my God, that's incredible. Like, this is like sometimes we call them the self-cleaning oven. Like, it's just so good. It's like, oh my God, like, they're just doing it themselves. This is amazing. But I believe that does come from them witnessing what we do, what Lauren and myself do, and the other people that we have obviously in our life as well. And so from my point of view, what is it? This is the question that I have. What can I control? Chris, what can I control? I can only control my thoughts and actions. So the thing is, I can only do my best with what that is. Outside of that, I have to let go of my attachment to any other stories or any other expectations or any other things that I want or anything like that, because I can't control that. Like that's, do you know what I mean? Like that's not doable. Like I will put my daughters to bed every single night. And as often as I can, I will remind myself that this could be the last time that I see them alive. Either I could die in the nighttime or they could. And I do that because it's extremely empowering to come back into the moment and to have the gratefulness for the most important things. Because I want to be able to be on my deathbed, truly looking back in my life, being like, you know what, Chris, you did good. You showed up. You did your best. Like you're there for it. Awesome. I'm ready to move on. I want to be able to answer the question on a day-to-day level. Today is a good day to die. And I say that from a empowering standpoint because it means that I've been doing what I wanted to have done, that I expect for myself, so that I could best serve the people in my life.
How do you know? You said, I can only control my thoughts and my actions.
Mm-hmm.
I know that a lot of people have conflicting desires about what actions they should take. Do I do this over here or do I do this over here in the same period of time? Which do I choose? And you have a level of clarity about that I think people can learn from. So how have you become so clear about what actions, because you have choices every single day and there's more desire than time, right? There's more things you can do generally than time on your plate if you're someone who has a curiosity about life and is creative and all of that. So how do you go about filtering, prioritizing, making those decisions? You seem very clear about that.
Thank you. I invest the time into thinking. I don't think enough people actually do the thinking, if I could be honest. I feel like it's sitting down. Number one, it's actually being able to concentrate. So one of the benefits of having a mindfulness or meditation practice is truly learning concentration. So being able to sit in a space by yourself without distractions and being able to go through a thinking process. Now, for me, journaling, I find, is an exceptional tool because I can have that conversation with myself. And it's almost like there's a BS meter between my brain and my fingers. And it's like before it comes out on the paper, I'm like, wrong, Chris. Like, be honest with yourself. Like, there's an essence of truth that can come through with that and being able to get through clarity. So I think it really does come down to thinking and like having the time and the space and the awareness and the presence and the concentration to actually be able to do that. And I think that's where it comes down to, there's a dark side to it because I feel like there is the ability, I can very much overthink. So from when I signed the deal to sell the company to closing date, it was only 5 weeks. And during those 5 weeks, I thought through everything. I was like up at 3 a.m. it was like this weird thing, like 3 a.m. every single day, my mind would just like pop open and I'd be like, dude, it's time to think through everything. And I was just like mulling through it all. I overdid that. Absolutely. And because I very much I was trying to control things I couldn't control. And so for me, the image that comes in my mind is whenever I feel like there is a forcing element happening, I remind myself to release the clenched fist in my mind. Because so much of the time there's this clenched fist in your mind that's trying to control and just overdo things. And I think that also happens to come back to your question, Amira, which is understanding that if you've got 2 different options, Charles Darwin, so an incredible thinker of humanity, okay, an incredible scientist, an incredible mind, there is a brilliant from his journal notes. He actually journaled a pros and cons list whether he should get married or not. Right. So he actually sat there and was journaling, be like, why should he get married or not? One of the points he said was it would be better than having a dog. Right? Having a wife would be better than having a dog. So you're pretty low bar. It was like, if you actually go through it, it's hilarious what he was saying. If you logically, if you looked at the list in which he wrote for should he get married or not, because it was like, there's extra expenses. And if he has children, do you know what I mean? Like, what's the cost of having children and like the heartache of having children and possibly losing them, which he actually did. Would his wife want to move somewhere else because he doesn't want to have to move, in which he actually did. And so it's hilarious looking through it, because logically you look at the list and be like, you shouldn't get married at all. That's terrible. Like, you could be one of the most amazing scientists of the time, which he did. And then he has this stream of consciousness in his journal, which would have just been like this midnight just dumping of his mind. And it was just like, do it, get married, get married, get married. And he got married. So I don't think it's logically trying to force an answer. Why I share that story is because so much of the time, I think we're trying to make the right decision. But what if we made the decision right? So what if we tried to let go of, oh my God, I need to make the right decision to get this right thing? Sometimes we're not going to make the right decision. And there's so much stuff that's outside of our control. Like, I put it to the goddess of fortune, right? So the goddess of fortune is going to have much more control over so much in what I can actually have. I just have to accept the unfolding of what life is as well. So again, there's a paradox. There is a paradox of, yes, I need to make the right decision because I shouldn't be a douchebag and do the wrong thing. But then there's also like, what happens, happens. And so therefore I just need to kind of like let go of my expectations of it as well.
Yeah, almost everything that one could teach and latch onto as a line in the sand, there's a duality to it. There's a light side, the light and the shadow to it. And it's not just if you overdo it, it's like there's just two sides to it. This is the law of polarity. There are two sides to everything. I call it self-ownership. When you trust yourself to understand that it's not textbook. There isn't a fill in the blanks, paint by numbers kind of way of living life, that you actually have to put yourself on the field of play. You have to experience life, and then you start triangulating the information, and then you start having that self-ownership, that self-authority, that self-trust. And then you know when it's time to wake up at 3 a.m. and that's productive and it's making the deal go through well and it's dotting the I's and it's doing the right thing. And when you need to let go of the fist in your head and actually, like, right now I'm over the line and now I need to do this instead. And you have that self-awareness and self-trust. And then you understand all the things that we've actually been talking about today, the sort of patience and action, the identity piece around like who you're being, right? All the stuff. Does discipline come through the habit and the reps, or does it come through the identity and who you're being, right? It's you have to know when to press which lever, when to emphasize which side. So I find this fascinating. Okay. So I could talk and talk and talk. This could be a Rogan podcast and it could be 3 hours. But we're going to wrap. I want to finish with a few questions and some reflections. But before I do that, 2 things. Where can people find you? And do you have anything else you want to share in terms of being a father to unstoppable women, soon to be women, girls right now?
Thank you. I appreciate that. The best place to go for anyone to have more is just the Christopher Dufey podcast. That's where I'm sharing as much as I possibly can throughout my journey and documenting what I'm going through and having amazing conversations just like this with amazing people just like you, Amira. And so that's the best place, the Christopher Dufey podcast. For the advice and like where it's at, I obviously can only really speak as from like a father's point of view and a man's point of view. And that's where I come down to the three words that I want to remind myself most, which is loving, compassionate, and joyful. So for me, am I being as loving, compassionate, and joyful? One, to myself, because I did not do that. I've struggled very much with worthiness and self-love previously. So it was actually coming to that for myself. Then it's obviously to my daughters. And then it's obviously to my wife as well. And then it's to the rest of my community. But specifically for my daughters, and then it also comes down to me having 4 fantastic children, is treating them individually and not lumping them together and being like people have asked me, like, what's your, like, do you mean like philosophy or thesis, or like, how do you parent? And it's like, well, I have 4 different parenting styles because there are 4 different children. There are 4 different individuals and they need different things at different times as well. And so for me, it's just very much a case of, okay, how do I accept this beautiful human being, this soul, for who they are right now, and actually just being there? Because anytime I'm not accepting them for who they are, I'm coming at it from a different story that's not serving, not coming from the best place to serve. And so it's very much been the case of me saying to myself, they are perfect the way they are right now. And so for me, I want to accept them for their perfection in this moment and being there in that moment.
I love it. So good. So good. So my final question, what do you love most about yourself?
I love who I am. I love who I am. And I could cry thinking about it because I did not, I have not for such a long time. It's a beautiful ride, this life that we get to have, and I want to be able to accept every single day of it gracefully and to be able to have the appreciation for it as well. And I think there's just been a level of acceptance and forgiveness and then love that I can give to myself and be like, you know what, Chris? Yeah, you are doing good. You are like being the best that you can. And like, yeah, you stuff up at things, but you get back on the horse and you fix it and you move forward and you improve and you evolve. And there's a level of acceptance there. So I think to answer the question, there's a totality of just like love for myself, because I believe we're all one at the end of the day. If you really go down to the, like, peeling that onion all the way through, loving myself is loving you, which is loving the listener, which is loving the entire experience that we have right now as what we're having right now in consciousness. So yeah, I think that would be it.
I think that's pretty special and pretty good. And I just want to end the podcast with some reflections. I think that the level of generosity and transparency that you come to this conversation with is exceptional. And I've really appreciated the way that you've owned your expertise and owned your wisdom and owned the hard-won knowledge and self-awareness that you have right now, how you own that, how you appreciate that and really claim it while still being on the journey and very much aware that there's ever more growth there, that you own both sides. And well, there's that theme again, all the sides. But I love that you can claim the strength and understand the journey and share it from a place of just pure wanting to be generous and grow. And I know that I have appreciated this so very, very much. And I think our listeners are going to eat it up. So please go check out Chris Dufey's podcast. Christopher Dufey, we'll put it in the show notes, and follow him and send him some love. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Amira. I love you and I respect you. You're an amazing human being.
Thank you.